It's a little confusing because my Apple clock on my computer is now unsynced somehow with my Apple clock on my phone. Good morning and welcome to the morning meeting at whatever time zone you're in. Appreciate you being here. Dan, Sean, and I are going to spin you through the day. There's so much going on, primarily related to tariffs. We have so many great elements to show you. We're going to dive right in and welcome everybody and say, as always, peace, love, and understanding, yada, yada, yada. No smack in the chat, yada, yada, yada. Here on the platform, raise your hand, yada, yada, yada. If you're on YouTube, welcome, or X, thank you. All right. Where are we news-wise? The president today at the White House has some events, believe it or not. Photo op with racing champions at 2 o'clock.
Announcement quite recently.
And then at 2:30, he is, what are we listening to there? At 2:30, he's, kill that audio if you would. At 2:30, he's signing executive orders, currently closed press. Now, as I said, there's so much going on. Let's look now live. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, is speaking to the ABA, not the American Basketball Association, but the American Bankers Association. Let's listen to this live. He was already on Fox Business, and he's getting rave reviews for his performance there. So let's listen to this.
And more efficient. So we'll see what happens. I think, unfortunately, just like auto accidents, we can put in seat belts, we can put in all the warning systems. There's still going to be auto accidents, but I think we can start pushing that down.
We agree, and we have all these public awareness campaigns that we're going to continue to bring to
bear. All right, we'll monitor this. We missed the top where he talked more about tariffs, but if you're from the establishment wing of the world, Scott Bessent is your best friend right now, and he's reassuring people, talking about negotiating. We'll come back. We'll set up the morning with tariffs. The markets overseas are down. The futures here are down. China's retaliated. It's creating a lot of negative feelings amongst the people who oppose this policy. Again, we'll get
and Mark, back in the day, the ABA was a very powerful interest group.
Yes, it was, and still is powerful enough to get the Treasury Secretary at 8:30 in the morning. I don't know what the Vice President's doing. On the Hill, House rules at this hour are supposedly meeting to try to move the one big beautiful bill, quote unquote, to the floor. The USTR, Mr. Greer, testifies at 10 o'clock. House Ways and Means. Democrats have a press conference on the House side at 11 on the Republican economic agenda. Noon, Michael Bennet holds a press conference on the child tax credit. And the Black Caucus at 4 o'clock has a press conference on veterans benefits. So you're seeing a lot of Democratic activity on Capitol. There's lots of Republican activity too, but those Democrats, notable. All right. Now, as we said, there's a lot going on in the world. There's stuff going on with bonds that are very troubling. Elizabeth Warren was on Squawk Box this morning, and she very aggressively criticized the president's policies. Please play 110.
Along with tariffs, maybe targeted tariffs, what's different about what the president is doing right now?
So look, I think tariffs are a very important part, a tool in our economic toolbox, but they have to be used in a way that is targeted. We have a specific goal. We are bringing it in with a timing that makes sense, so we're going to be able to manufacture things at home. Take, for example, the pharmaceutical industry. Right now, you've got a 9 out of 10 chance that when you have a prescription filled, that it was made somewhere overseas, probably Asia, and the materials for it came from China. That puts us in a vulnerable position. So using tariffs as part of an integrated strategy to get more pharmaceuticals manufactured here in the United States makes sense economically, makes sense strategically, but that is not what Donald Trump is doing. By putting across-the-board tariffs with virtually every nation on virtually every product with no planning and no rhyme or reason to the numbers is just creating economic chaos. And when there's economic chaos, no one wants to make investments in the United States to build more manufacturing, to build more good jobs here in America.
So Elizabeth Warren, who's normally seen as from the far left of the Democratic Party, is now speaking exactly like Democratic centrists and every financial person I know, right? That's the point of view. They're not against fair trade. They're not against using tariffs and retaliation, but they think the way this is being done is a disaster. Larry Summers, 106. Larry Summers is willing to criticize Democrats. He criticized Joe Biden. He's very, very out there on social media, on TV appearances. Developments in the last 24 hours suggest we may be headed for a serious financial crisis, wholly induced by U.S. government tariff policy. This is the view, not just of Elizabeth Warren and Larry Summers, I'll keep going, but of people in the financial community. Here is a tweet from someone, 107, Buco Capital on X. Very representative, again, of the point of view of the establishment. How it appears to me right now, would be happy to be wrong. Trump doesn't want to negotiate. Fed is becoming irrelevant. The only thing that stops this train is legislative or judicial intervention. We are a lot more pain away from that. So again, it's being reported that the Chamber of Commerce might sue. Somebody withstanding has to sue, and Sean tagged this early. Those in the financial, the Chamber did?
Not the Chamber did, but another group did.
Yeah, other groups did. Yes, the Koch back group did. But those in the financial community who keep asking me and saying publicly, Congress should stop this. Okay. Yes, every Democrat wants to stop it. Some Republicans. But here is the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Chairman
Jason Smith.
Jason Smith. Thank you very much.
Missouri.
Here's Chairman Jason Smith on Squawk Box this morning, showing you how strongly Republicans are supporting President Trump's policies. 109, please.
But the only thing that the prior administration virtually kept intact.
Okay, we'll try that again. Do you want to play a different one, Paul, or you want to play that one? I want to get to that one eventually, but
let's play Besson first. I just pulled that.
Okay. Well, no, hold off on Besson for 1 second.
Okay.
I want to hear from Jamie Dimon. So Jamie Dimon, as you know, widely considered balls and strikes, said supportive things about Donald Trump and his tariff policy during the campaign. Here's what Jamie Dimon said this morning, 108, about the tariff policy. All right, the same problem there. Can we play either of those, or are those both gone bad?
No, we can play them. Let me just try one more time.
Okay. I'm particularly interested in Jason Smith, if we can play that.
From Missouri, when I was at H&R Block, he was someone we spoke to a lot.
Yep. Very smart guy, very respected within the party.
But the only thing that the prior administration virtually kept intact of the Trump presidency in his first term was his China tariffs. That was literally the only thing that they reaffirmed. Now, when you look at what the president's trying to do, he's doing exactly what he campaigned on. He campaigned on delivering these tariffs. It was no secret about it, so no one should be surprised. He says countries have been taking advantage of the United States for a long time, and they have been. I would disagree with my colleagues that you were talking with earlier. They were talking about we should make sure that the European Union is straightened out and we don't address it. The European Union is the reason why we have an agriculture trade deficit in America. We have a $32 billion agriculture trade deficit with the European Union, and we have a $32 billion agriculture deficit in the world. That is unacceptable. But why is that, Joe? Why is that? Honduras purchases more pork from us, a country of 10 million people, than the entire European Union of 450 people. Angola purchases more chicken from us than the entire European Union, and they have a GDP 200% less. 200% less than the European Union. Give me a break.
Okay. We'll skip Jamie Dimon for now. Bond market freaking people out. The markets here are widely expected to close pretty down again. You have almost everybody in the financial community saying if Congress or the courts don't bail us out, this will be financial Armageddon. Sean, everything the congressman said is true. Everything the president says about the long-term trends are true. But is it possible in your mind that he's taking too big a bet here and he could cause a world financial crisis? Is that a possibility or not?
Of course, it's a possibility, but I think that look, Trump monitors markets probably more than anybody. And so I think there's a breaking point that he reaches, but he's also, he is the ultimate guy that wants a deal. That's how he's, even last night at that NRCC dinner, he kept talking about his ability to get deals. And so I think it's not like he's living in a vacuum. He's very, he's getting multiple calls from CEOs, lawmakers, etc. He's watching the news. He's well aware of what's going on. I just expect there to be, and I've said it before, I'm surprised that it's been delayed as much, but I do think that, by this weekend, they're going to have to get to a deal announcing thing. And just to dispel the front end of that, look, Congress will not pass, nor would the president ever sign anything restoring Congress's constitutional trade responsibilities. That's not going to happen. And the court would have a hard time coming in and saying that the executive can't negotiate trade deals or utilize specific powers. So either President Trump gets this at some point, which I think he will, and I actually think it'll come out in a strong position. I do think that he will get to a position where countries are giving him something. And Dan made this point a while ago. It may not be he may sort of say this is the deal, which is a tariff reduction, not have to deal with the non-tariff barriers, something like that. But he will get something for this. And so, but it's going to come. This is not going to go that much further. And then I would say, another week or so of really bad stuff. You saw the market look up Monday, beginning of the week when they thought there was hope for a deal. I think the reaction today is going to be pretty harsh because we're now at 104 on Chinese goods. And that's has a real impact on businesses and on people. So I think today might be the worst of the storm, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Dan.
Yeah, I think it's not just Wall Street that's flashing all these signs. Corporations have their earnings reports. If there's a material change in their environment, they have to notify shareholders. This morning, Walmart, Delta, I think Caterpillar and others are pulling their guidance that the market is deteriorating such that it will materially impact their bottom line. What does usually come when that happens? Layoffs. So I think you're seeing companies are going to begin to prepare for the real world problems that are about to be unleashed. So to Sean's point, hopefully Trump strikes deals soon. I think that, the challenge here is in places like the EU and China, they have domestic audiences too. They cannot appear to be caving. I know Trump likes to say everyone's begging him. It's just like what he does. It's part of his MO. Perhaps some are on bended knee begging him, but there will have to be a finessing of what do they give and what do they get. They do not want to just give. In Europe, hopefully we can open their ag markets, but that is one of their sacred cows. In a lot of European countries, agriculture is like it's like MAGA to Trump. I mean, to screw with them is to put your own political life at risk. So we're going to see. And I thought Elizabeth Warren, that was great discipline, great messaging. We'll get to the party here in a minute, but Trump's runway is short, but he's got a little more probably.
I just don't see Congress reining him in because they're just not going to override a veto.
No, and they're not.
Well, that's not true. They won't now. They won't now. Look, guys, if inflation's 20% and people are having like unemployment in their district at 25%,
we're never getting there.
We're not getting there.
We're not getting there.
Happen.
We're not getting there.
Then
He'll pull the plug. He'll pull the plug before we're anywhere close to that.
Great.
But I do say again, I wish the courts would just go quickly. This is not a time for the normal wheels of justice grinding slowly. This thing should be rocketed to the Supreme Court. It's an extraordinary moment, and there's a decent chance that the president will be told by the courts he doesn't have this authority. It would be a shame to have the international economy ruined because the judicial system's playing by the normal schedule. All right, polling. I'm normally a big fan of well-done polling on a timely basis. Just it's interesting, and it gives people in public life a sense of where the public is. I don't think this is a topic you can poll right now. It's too volatile. It's too fast-moving. The issues are too complicated. I'm just wondering if either of you think that if the few polls that have been done, and I'm surprised at how few there are, do you see anything in the polling that argues for or against the president, the proposition that the president has public support for what he's doing? I don't, but do either of you see anything that's meaningful?
I don't know that I've actually seen anything against either, just to be clear.
I don't mean to say, you're right. I don't mean to say it that way. Just either way, just just is there anything you see in the polling that says, you know what, the White House should be worried because even Republicans, even MAGA people are against this, or vice versa, that he has broad enough support to continue? I don't, but do either of you see anything?
Yeah, I think before this all went into effect, polling was continuously asking about tariffs, and they were asking about inflation and the state of the economy, and his numbers were underwater, and they weren't, frankly, it wasn't close. It was like 10, 15 points underwater. So the country going into this was skeptical.
I agree with that.
And was worried. So, has that moved dramatically in either direction? I think, as we've said, if you're MAGA, you're hopeful and you trust the president to get this, done. I think if you were skeptical going in, there's probably nothing that's happened to make you less skeptical. And that is a problem for the White House.
Sean.
I think, like, to your point, like, I don't think it's going to get much further. Either he starts showing results by, Friday, meaning, and this isn't me saying, I think he's going to start demanding of his team, hey guys, you all sold me on the fact that this is what was going to happen. And so by Friday, if there's nothing to show, I think he's going to pick a couple people to be winners.
Yeah. We'll be in a trade war with China, though, right? There's no backing down.
I think that's the one thing that right now, I mean, I think the way I look at this is the world and China.
Yeah.
And you could almost solve the world problem, and China's still going to be the issue because of how much we get from there. So that's going to be the other issue. I don't know how you back down on that. The only way, as I've said, is I do see some kind of announced summit where everybody agrees to take their arms down and kind of goes to an economic ceasefire and say, okay, we're going to meet in July in, Beijing or wherever. And until then, we are going to take our tariffs down and we will meet and discuss them. But to me, that's the only way that the air comes out of the balloon.
Yeah, we know that public sentiment has moved towards protectionism and trade wars because Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, the last two Democratic nominees, and Kamala Harris in a less direct way, last three, all have downplayed any fidelity to free trade. They're not proposing big international trade agreements. They as Congressman Smith pointed out, Joe Biden kept the tariffs largely on China. So that's the drift. And you heard Elizabeth Warren, Sean, say, we're for dealing with these issues. We're for bringing manufacturing back, just like Donald Trump. We're for trying to stop unfair trade practices, just like Donald Trump. We just think what he's doing is too broad and wrongheaded. Where is the Democratic Party on trade? Is that basically the unified position?
So here's what I don't mean to fast forward, but I know from prepared remarks that Gretchen Whitmer was given today. I think that the funny thing is, and Elizabeth Warren, I can't believe I'm going to say this, I actually think started to hit on a smart tune, which is, hey, we don't disagree with the need for tariffs and onshoring more stuff back. We don't like the process. We don't like the tactics, right? To me, that's actually the smart move. As opposed to, watching some of these other Washington Democrats come out and just say, I'm against Trump. Because traditionally, that's been where most Democrats have been, which is we do support tariffs. We do support this policy. And two, is I think a lot of Americans probably agree with this goes back to so much of what Trump does. I agree with his goal. I'm not sure I agree with the tactic, right? When you talk to people. And so I think that whether it's Whitmore, she's obviously got or appears to have aspiration, but I think that it's if I were a Democrat, I would say focus on the process, not like what he's actually doing, because what he's doing is at its core pretty democratic, right? Bringing back jobs, fairness, all that kind of stuff, fighting for the American worker.
Dan.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, and I think I even heard some people dovetail this into Doge too, like just that this is where we've always said they should be, right? It's reckless and indiscriminate how they're doing it, but fundamentally some of what they're doing is right. I've said it all week. I think the party is showing discipline. I think it's the right message. We're going through change on trade as the Republicans are going through change on trade, because they used to be the party of free trade, going back to Reagan, and now they are becoming more of a working class party. And so I think we are smart to point out where trade benefits people. I keep saying this, 65, 70% of America benefits mightily from free trade. it would be idiotic to go to war with the majority of the country. We are a democracy. So we ought to kind of speak to the benefits, whereas, and Sean said, address the challenges. And I think they're pitch perfect.
Okay. So last night, the president gave a 90-minute speech. It was in the evening, but it wasn't at midnight Eastern time. And I read a ton of stuff this morning. I didn't even see him quoted almost anywhere. So before we talk about what he said, Dan, why, at a time when there's a lot of focus on what the president's thinking, and he talked about trade and reconciliation, a bunch of stuff, why did no one cover his speech?
Well, I think the Politicos and stuff of the world did, because I saw it included in everything this morning. The Axios is, look, I think it may be two things.
Barely.
Yeah.
Barely.
Well, so I think one of it may be Trump talks a lot. It's not like we hadn't heard from him all day yesterday or all week. Like, we're hearing from him almost every few hours, either on X or at the microphone. So I think to some extent, I wonder a little bit. It was a political event. Traditionally, the media doesn't really cover those things. They're usually not news making, because it's just like a, ho-hum speech and the principal gets out. But you're right. He went for 90 minutes, and some of what he said was quite entertaining.
It's not, it's, as far as I saw, it's not in the Washington Post. It's not in the New York Times. It's not in the Wall Street Journal. Sean, why do you think that is?
It's a fascinating question. Yesterday, I was watching Caroline Brief and I was in an office that had the quad up, and about 12, 15 minutes in, CNN was the first one to break away. Then MSNBC, and Fox was the only of the three major networks, the one that carried it. And I think that I think part of this is they don't want, they are reverting back to that Trump derangement syndrome of, I don't want to cover it. The idea that the president of the United States, at a time when we are potentially going to have one of the worst days in the market, doesn't want to take the president live.
Yeah.
Is, to me, you have to stop. Every time the press talks about press freedom, press access, they're full of crap.
Well, I don't know if it's that they
full access. You didn't see for 4 years the last president of the United States so much as do a wellness check. And now you have the president of the United States go out there and give you his take on what he's about to do on one of the biggest financial, in the prelude to one of the biggest financial days, and they wouldn't take it. They wouldn't talk about it. You can only surmise that the reason that they don't want to is because they don't want you to know. They don't want you to see the other side of the story. After watching and perusing some of the morning shows this morning, it is unbelievable how one-sided it is. Like, the only reason this is doing this is because Trump is an alien that loves Nazis. He's a horrible person, and here's all the people that will suffer because of his decisions. It was like, it is just abysmal how bad the media is right now.
Oh, I disagree completely that this was an intentional, let's just not put him.
What do you think, that like the Gilmore Girls was sort of, the ratings were higher?
Look, they're covering them for hours and hours every single day. Like, they are putting them up. And I think at some point you make a decision. Are we going to carry the NRCC live, which is not, Sean, you would admit.
Fine, don't carry it live.
Don't carry it live, but I don't know how he's not quoted. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. I think you both are partly right, but I don't really understand.
Can I ask both you? Did he say anything last night new?
Yes.
Other than he said it entertainingly.
No. So here's something he said new. Okay. Please get ready to play number 104. He had a bunch of House Republicans over to the White House. Yep. And as Sean said, they didn't get as many votes back yesterday as we were expecting. And I'm revising my position now. I'm not sure they're going to be able to vote this week. Doesn't mean they'll never vote. But if they don't vote this week, the thing's going to be in a much different place than I had thought yesterday. So last night, one of the things the president did, obviously speaking to the NRCC, so he's saying, I'm here raising you guys tens of millions of dollars. You're going to have to vote for the Senate reconciliation package. Here's the president last night making that point, 104, in an in-your-face manner.
And they have to do this. They have to get there. And I think we are there. We had a great meeting today. I think we are there. But just in case there are a couple of Republicans out there, you just got to get there. Close your eyes and get there. It's a phenomenal bill. Stop grandstanding. Just stop grandstanding.
So, Dan, to answer your question, at a time when the president's entire legislative agenda is on the line before his own party, at a time when it's assumed that they will bend the knee to him and give him what he wants, he has a meeting, he doesn't get the votes, and then he goes into their place for their fundraiser, and he confronts them saying, stop grandstanding, not with honey, but with vinegar and a stick, saying, you have to vote this way. I don't know much about the news business. That's news to me.
I mean, but is it? Because he's been very consistent about, like, that's my point. he didn't make news with that statement. There was
He
no
did.
ambiguity.
He did, Dan. He didn't say, I'm not going to talk about it because there are private negotiations still going on. He didn't say, here's all the reasons they should vote for it. He called them grandstanders, and he said they have to vote for the bill. That's news. That was his play on this question last night before the NRCC. It's news.
I know, but Mark, he's been saying all week they're going to do it. They have to do it. It's our beautiful bill. So I mean, that's my point. It was entertaining, and like I hear you, the way he did it and the words he used.
It's news.
But hold on. I mean, but let's back up to a national audience. A reconciliation bill that's like in step 2 of 10 is going to come to the Rules Committee to go to the floor to then start the big negotiation for the actual bill. Respectfully, Mark, I don't think the average American is like, it is not the bill to become law. It is a process vote first up, and they're struggling. And so I think if they go to the Rules Committee and they yank it, that will be news, because then to your point, there's a real problem. Like, I hear you guys that maybe the Beltway and others would have alluded to it a little bit more, but there was nothing there last night that to me was like, oh boy.
Sean,
Again, all I'll just say is that I agree with Mark. It's not good news, right? The idea that the president of the United States is going to the NRCC and saying, hey, get your act together, boys and girls. Like that is news. Again, that's not, hey, good job that you got it done today. Like pat on the back. It's actually, hey, I'm going to come after you. Like I actually took that as I'm not playing. I will come after you. I will come out. I mean, like,
I agree.
Like if I was sitting in the audience last night and I had been a no, I would have just walked up to Emmer and been like, hey, changed my mind. I'm with you.
Yes. Yep. Sean, where do you share my view that we're not as confident as we were yesterday that he's going to they're going to get this passed this week?
No, I think Chip Roy, when he comes out and says what he says, Chip Roy's not a guy that backs down. And I don't think the fundamental pretzel that these guys have tied themselves in is that the Senate, I mean, this is like a cute little game, right? 2 Wednesdays ago, the House passed a bill and then left town and said to the Senate, what are you going to do? And the Senate, because it was before a recess, so they had to pass it because they couldn't send it back to the House. Okay, fine. So the Senate tweaks it, sends it back to the House, and they're going, fine, what do you do? So the problem is if the House changes it again, it's got to go back and back again. And that's
right. So is it going to pass this week or not?
No. Well, no, I don't think it passes this week. I think
so just to be clear, you've changed as I have, right? Yesterday we both thought it was going to pass this week.
Well, I think my direct thing was I have serious reservations, but they've always gotten it done. The way after yesterday's meeting, I think it gets done somehow, but it's not like he's going to have to pull that.
But not this week.
Not this week.
Okay, so I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. It seems like that's a change because I thought yesterday
we both. No,
yes.
I would have said. I mean, yesterday I think my position was it's not going to be pretty. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I do think that like the muscle will come through.
Yeah,
I think they will have to hold it tomorrow.
Yes. And just to be clear, I'm changing a subsidiary position. Not only do I now think the base case is it doesn't happen this week, I previously had said, and I mocked those who disagree with me, that the tariff situation was going to strengthen his hand by saying to Republicans, we all have to work together now to pass our shared agenda to change the subject away from tariffs and to send the signal to voters that they're going to get a tax cut. Now, what I think's happened is it's not the policy or even the market reaction. It's the feeling that they're incompetent and they're not communicative and they're not making Congress a partner. And that's giving these dozen or so members in the House who don't want to vote yes the opportunity to say, you're the game that can't shoot straight. You're trying to convince us, you're trying to sell us a bill of goods by supporting the Senate bill. We're just not going to support the Senate bill. So it's about competence, as Michael Dukakis would say, not ideology.
Well, I would take a strain on that and say, I think what a lot of these members are saying, hey, you guys went it alone on the tariff strategy, and now you're trying to jam us on this bill. Okay, yeah. Well, if you don't care about what we think on the tariffs, then don't care what I think about on the budget bill.
Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
And I also think I keep going back to this. It will blow the delta is about $5 trillion in deficit, right? So it's like, do we add 2 trillion? Do we add 7 trillion? And these guys have said for years that they care about this. And I think it's also like, we don't trust you because Donald Trump does not care about deficits. I'm sorry, Sean, in my opinion, he could
No,
care
I don't
less.
think that. I think like no,
Never
I
has in
don't
his
disagree.
personal life, his
I would
business.
say I don't think he doesn't not care about them. I don't think that's his highest priority.
His view is he's not going to be the sucker president who deals with it. The next person can. Throw up the floor, the markets, please, and we'll watch the open together. I was going to show you a soundbite from Bobby Kennedy doing his first TV interview since becoming HHS secretary. He did it with CBS and talked about supporting the not objecting to people getting the measles vaccine and encouraging people to do it, but saying it shouldn't be mandated. In any event, we won't play the bite because I just want to stay on the floor. But Dan, just what's your thumbnail report card on how Secretary Kennedy is doing so far?
It's Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, he gives an interview and kind of, I think, says some of the right things, but then the actions behind the scenes, they're firing people, running people out, and who are advocating for what he then says, we want to do in public. I think he's a mess. I really question how long he survives because of the headaches he's going to cause Republicans.
Sean, Jekyll and Hyde, Goofus and Gallant.
No. I actually think Bobby's winning huge kudos for how he's addressing a lot of stuff. So I think he's getting a lot of praise. The way he's handling not just pharmaceuticals, but going in and talking about the big food and generally recognized things that are in our food, all this kind of stuff. It's great. So I think he's earning a lot of kudos from people on the right, how he's handling this, and he's staying away from sort of, I would call the issues that like he's not like all the concerns that people on the right had, he's staying away from. He's actually doing exactly what he said, and I think that's giving a lot of reassurance to people.
Sean, I am going to be really curious the reaction within the Republican Party if he goes after soda and junk food with SNAP. I've got some history on that. Yeah, you're biting a hand that feeds you a little bit, no pun intended. I will be very, very curious what the reaction is.
It's funny. I will say this, that I had that whole discussion on the show yesterday. And one of the things, like so much else, and this is, this is that like, it's easy to say something like, I want to, lower taxes for people. When you get into the details, that's where the difference is. And one of the things that was interesting about the conversation yesterday is, how do you define healthy? I mean, like, there's a lot of fruit jinks that have a ton of sugar in them. Would they be, I mean, like, you go down a very slippery slope. I do think that what he's bringing, like what I think is healthy, is a degree of transparency to what's in our food. I am a big conservative when it comes to allowing people to make choices. If you want to do bad things to your body, that's your choice. But I think that I think there's large scale agreement on what Bobby's doing is allowing people to have a better understanding that if the government says something's on the shelf and it's safe, is it actually, safe? And I think that there's widespread agreement on that.
All right, we're going to bring you folks in while we watch the market. You see largely down so far on the earliest of trading. We'll stay with us for a bit. Susan, welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what is on your mind.
Hi, I am from Washington State. I love this program, hands down best news program out there. I've told multiple people about it.
Thank you for that.
I just had a couple comments, one about 2-8 tonight last night, and one I want to push back on something Sean said yesterday. I am a conservative. I supported Trump. I am an average American, close to retirement. Most people, I feel, in this country, or at least myself and my friends, we understand basically what tariffs are, what a trade deficit is, but we really don't get what it means to the economy. Last night, I don't remember the author's name. She was talking about how billionaires are stressed about these tariffs, but the average Americans she's speaking with aren't concerned. They want to give Trump his chance. I would say average Americans are very concerned. And and I don't even feel like, oh, I want to give Trump his chance. I don't have a choice. And so I'm just hoping that that it is going to be okay. Being close to retirement and seeing my 401k plummet is concerning. Watching my parents who are already retired, their resources diminishing, and we don't have the years to make it up. And I do believe our economy will come back. That's a concern. And then my pushback for you, Sean, and though I almost always agree with you, when Mark, you say we extend grace and mercy to everyone, or at least that encouragement. And I have needed that encouragement in my everyday life and have used it. So I appreciate that constant reminder. When the markets were doing better at first yesterday, Sean, you said all those people who were whining, I want them to stop whining about the economy. It's the average American who's concerned. And I don't look at it as whining. I look at it as concerned. This is our livelihood.
Brilliant. Susan,
So
thank you.
that's
Thank you for speaking
yeah.
for tens of millions with that point of view. Sean.
Yeah, sorry, Susan. I apologize if it came off that way. People like you. I mean, I'm concerned about the market, right? I'm not immune from this. No one is. I've got a retirement account. Mark made us disclose all of our. I mean, it's somewhere close to an SF-86 of disclosure the other day. But like, look, I've got stocks. I've got this. I've got two kids. I'm saving for college, like a lot of other people, right? So it's not like I'm immune or I'm cheering for this, but I guess my point is, and is more of the, not the Susans of the world that are out there trying to figure it out, but these people who have talked about, who are the so-called experts who are quick to talk about everything, we're excusing Biden for everything that he did, ignored the drop in the market when he had a massive one and said it was just a correction, allowed him to say that inflation was transitory. And now suddenly they have this profound concern about every market dip. And my point is that, they are, most of these folks are so quick to blame Trump for a rainy day. And then when it's sunny, it's, hey, nothing to look at here. And so I apologize if my comments came across to average people. That wasn't the intent. Was more to these elites who continue to feel like they have it right all along. The same people who have led us down a path that told us letting China into the WTO was a brilliant move. The same people who have told us over and over again that all of these issues were great for our policies and have allowed us to get to the position that we're had. So my comments were and are directed at the people who seemingly think that they're the smartest people in the world when it comes to commentary, and yet overlook it when they're wrong.
I want to let Dan in and maybe ask Susan you a question, but just to update you, in addition to the retaliatory tariffs announced by China, the EU just announced retaliatory tariffs on U.S. imports of steel set to begin April 15th. And the EU continues to meet to formulate their group response regarding overall reaction to the president's tariffs. Dan, question for Susan, if you like.
I mean, Susan, I thought you said it really well. And Mark, that was a great two-way tonight with just a great set of perspectives from outside the Beltway. It's always good to hear that. Susan, I'm incredibly empathetic. I think my question would be, because I think you speak for tens of millions, and I think you speak for the majority. Because I think if Trump had lost Western Pennsylvania already, ball game. I mean, he'd be at 5% on this issue. Like, that is the core. Appalachia, right down. If he loses that, it's over. How long are you willing to be patient? How much longer? So Sean said maybe a week. Would you be willing to go 2 months?
Do you mean in whether I would vote?
I just mean
I have a choice of being patient.
Right now, your answer was you're hopeful.
I am.
Would it turn to scorn? Would it turn to anger? Or would you just, depression?
Maybe hopeful is not the right word. I'm worried. And there have been things since he took office that I have not been pleased with, even though I'm conservative and I supported him. And this is one that I am not educated on this. So I have no idea where this is going to go. And
Susan, let me ask you this.
I was going to say.
The president talked about tariffs during the campaign, right? He said tariffs are the most beautiful word, and he said he'd do this. Is it being done differently than you anticipated? Stipulating, as you've said, you're not an expert. What's different than what you think he promised to do?
What is surprising me is I had always assumed that a lot of tariffs are bigger than just the tariff. It is also has to do with defense and other deals that we're doing internationally with different countries. And so across the board, just with everyone, has me wondering how many deals are being undone that were done with our allies. It kind of reminds me of how at the beginning he just laid off a bunch of people in the federal workforce without looking at actually what jobs were needed and not. And this seems similar to that. I may be not analyzing that correctly.
No, that's a great answer, Susan. Dan, did you want to say one more thing?
Yeah. Susan, if Trump, let's say it's bumpy for like another week and there's market goes down another, 1,000, 2,000 in aggregate. He has some deals and that give us a little bit of more access, but nothing major. Would this fundamentally alter how you view Trump going forward? Like, was this so scary that you're scarred now? Or would you be like, all right, bad few weeks, but onward and upward?
This doesn't alter how I view Trump. But I do think a number of the people I talk with he will lose a lot of people who were in the middle who voted for him.
Yep.
I think the Republican Party will. So getting bills passed in Congress, I think that those average Americans are going to be contacting their representatives, senators, and I think that's where at the beginning he had so much support, I think, in Congress because they were afraid to go against Trump's base. I think Trump is going to lose that.
Susan, go ahead, Sean.
I was going to ask, I want to just invert it for a second. What does a win look like? Just, again, from your perspective, what would, when you hear something on the news in the next week, if it, knowing what you know, because again, I think that's what matters, right? People like you who he's targeting. What does a win look like? If they announce that I did something, the stock market goes up, is it a win? If 15 countries say that they're reducing their tariffs, when you hear something on the news, what will signal to you, okay, this was worth it, or if anything?
Well, if we don't slide into a recession, that would be a win. If the market will stabilize, I'm concerned we'll slide into a recession. Buying goods, we haven't recovered from COVID yet. I mean, the cost of goods is outrageous.
Yeah. Susan, has the president's actions in the last week caused you to lose any of your trust in his judgment?
Okay. Yes and no. I think I think he can be rash and bold and quick, and that concerns me on some things that seem to be more nuanced. But so yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe he's doing how I think he has been, and I just didn't realize it would be as wide sweeping and across the board.
Well, and by the way, Susan, that's because he never said it would be. I mean, I keep hearing he ran on this. So when he says stuff like, we're going to lock up Hillary, everything, oh, come on, we don't take him literally, just take him seriously, all this. He never once said, I'm going to hit every single sector worldwide with massive tariffs, and you have to take some medicine.
Didn't say he wouldn't.
Yeah, but, no, he said he's going to deal with China. He said he's going to deal with the EU. He's going to deal with steel. Like, he actually did.
Well, he
And
said
so,
he said all sorts of things.
well, but okay, but that's my
Yeah.
point.
No,
So
I take your point. I was mostly
but you
I was
can't.
mostly kidding.
Yeah, for all the people
Yeah.
who say, well, he ran on this, so like
Yeah.
tough. He didn't, folks.
Yep. Sean.
He
No,
didn't.
I'm intrigued by your answer, Susan, because I expect him to put up some big wins, like to say, like, you know, and when you say market stabilization would be a win, I actually think that that's a, you know, and I'm intrigued by that because I think stabilizing the market to me wouldn't be a win. That would, you know, he's got to put points on the board up. That's what he has pledged to do.
Right. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Sean. Go ahead.
No, I think it's fascinating because that goes to something, right? Which is, if I mean, this is the whole conversation we're having. If Susan, who is basically where that bar is, which is, hey, I just want this thing to stable. That if you're a Trump team in the back of your mind, you're like, that gives you a much different calculus than we've got to achieve a bunch of great things, right? And I think to me, that's a fascinating metric that I would assume, you know, from where I am, that in order for Trump to be able to walk around and to get people like Susan to say, wow, that was worth it. A week of disruption, but he got the EU to take that 38-2. He got Japan, whatever. So I actually, maybe I would wonder how many other people share that sentiment, because I think that the bar is higher.
Yeah. Susan, stand by for 1 second. The markets opened down, but now the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ are all actually in positive territory. I love saying stuff like positive territory because I never was a business anchor.
No, I won't chide anyone, Susan, I promise.
And even Delta is up. They put out their, you know, Dan mentioned the earnings reports. They're all now going to be very closely watched. Their earnings report yesterday and their forecast was not great, and yet they're up right now. So interesting. Susan, we love when people come back. I'd love for you to come back as regularly as you can wake up this early to watch, because we don't want to turn you into a one-person focus group for all of America. But you're obviously being very thoughtful about this. I like your acknowledgement that you're not an expert, because most people aren't. And so please come back regularly. Raise your hand. We'd love it as you develop different points of view about what's happening. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you for coming. We hope you'll come back.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Gonzalo, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are after you unmute and what's on your mind.
Hi, how are you? Thanks, Mark. I'm originally from Peru. I'm living in Boston now. And the reason I'm here, I usually watch this on, sorry?
Go Sox.
Go Sox.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, not a huge fan of the Sox, but
what?
I'm doing my MBA here, so I'm just here for.
And are you here on a student visa or?
Yeah, student visa. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
yeah,
welcome.
I'm here with my family.
Welcome. Thank you.
But so the reason I'm here is because I wanted to just give a perspective of somebody who is not from here, doesn't vote, but definitely is going to be affected with the decisions that this country makes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So basically, I'm super confused by the number of people who feel defeated, who feel that China has already won, that China has all the cards, and the US can't do anything. It's just very, very sad, because I grew up looking up to the US. You know, the US was able to do things. You went to the moon because not because it was easy, but because it was hard, right? So I just want to share that perspective with you. We look up to you because you do hard things. You went and do a democracy when making a democracy was crazy against one of the greatest empires of the world, right? So it just don't forget your history. You have done harder things than this. So that's the first point. The second point is that I've been listening to a podcast that it's called Fall of Empires, and it's amazing because you see the same trend. You have an empire, they are doing great, but they get very comfortable in whatever thing they are comfortable with. For example, the Romans were comfortable with the slave labor. Of course, at some point, that's gonna have a toll, right? And the same with the English and colonialism. The Second World War came and everything fell apart. So I think that the US is at that moment. I think that you just have to remember why the US exists. What makes you Americans? I think that's the main thing. And then also, it's just crazy how in a week it seems like you are going through 5 different crises. While in China, I bet that Chinese are just going to work and doing their own thing. because they have a long-term perspective. Also, remember that only a year and a half ago, the stock market was lower than today. So where can it go in the future? Like way, way up. And the last thing I want to say, you have $37 trillion in debt. If you go to the airport, if you go to the highways, if you go to the towns in rural America, do you see $37 trillion? Do you see that? It's just crazy. I love to travel with my family. We just hump on the minivan. We drive to Maine and to New Hampshire and Vermont, and you see the rural towns. That's not a 37 trillion debt country. It's just not. So where is that money? You have to ask yourself, like, where is that money? It has to be somewhere.
It's on.
And
It's
I
on.
haven't
It's on
been to
Sean's
China.
pension. It's on Sean's pension plan.
Well,
I haven't
but it
been to
went
China,
down.
but I've
It
seen the
went down.
pictures and videos. And I
Gonzalo,
guess that some trillions are there.
yeah, Gonzalo, all great points. Really interesting. Do you have kids?
Yeah, we have two. One was born here a year ago, and the other one is from back. She's 3 years old.
Yeah, and so one is 3 and one's a baby.
Yeah,
Infant?
yeah.
All right. So I was going to ask you what they love about America, but it's probably too soon for you to answer that. Sean, go ahead.
I was just gonna, when you say that when you drive through and you don't see that we're 37 trillion, you mean it doesn't, everything looks great and you can't see it? Is that, yeah?
No, you see poverty.
Yeah.
Poverty.
In other words,
that you
where'd
couldn't
the money go? Part of it went for the new LaGuardia Airport. Part of it went for the new
yeah.
LaGuardia
And the
Airport.
big dig.
I mean,
Yeah.
I lived in New York and I went to LaGuardia when it got flooded every year.
Yeah.
So like that's not something you have in the greatest city of the world, right? Like,
I think what your point is, if we spend 37 trillion, maybe our roads would be better and our other airports would be better, and
the health and the food
Yeah,
you eat, like
yeah.
you should have the best standard.
our food is crap. Our food is crap.
Well, I mean, hold on. We are still the best country in the industrialized world.
Also,
I mean,
there is a Wi-Fi dead spot in near the Lincoln Memorial that has like.
Yeah.
The problem is when you see, for example, X and most of the tech people telling you that, hey, we cannot do it without China, then it gets worrisome because it's supposed to, the tech sector in the US is supposed to be leading the world, but actually they can't without China. So it's complicated.
Gonzalo, let me ask you this maybe a little bit of a loaded question. Why are you getting your MBA in the United States of America as opposed to at home or someplace else?
Thank you.
Because there is no better place for you to learn and compete than the US. There isn't. Everybody wants to come here.
So maybe the 37 trillion contributed to that in some indirect way.
Yeah, I mean,
so yes and no, because once you're here, you realize that there are other problems that you don't see up from outside. You only see it when you live here, right? And basically, the problems that we have with bipartisan politics is one of them. Like Republicans will be against Democrats, even though Democrats can do good things, and Democrats will be against Republicans, even though they can do good things too. So it's like what they were saying on the chat, like, show me a good article about Trump on the New York Times. It's just almost impossible.
Dude, don't read the chat. Don't read the chat.
No, he said the New York Times.
I learned that today.
Gonzalo, how'd you learn about two-way?
David Sachs shared that on the All In podcast, and
recently.
No, during the campaign.
Oh, during the campaign.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
got it. Gonzalo, thank you for joining. Welcome. We love having you here in the United States and on the program, and please come back regularly.
Yeah.
All right, appreciate it. All right, David Bonson's going to take a brief break from trading his customers' money to tell us what's going on. If you haven't heard David before, you will recall, you won't know, but if you have, you'll recall, not a huge fan of the tariff policy, to say the least. David, what are you seeing so far, and what else on your mind?
You know, there's actually been a couple of things as I've been sitting here. I'm at our office up in Oregon and spoke to about 70 clients last night, and 60 out of 70 from my informal polling were Trump voters, and 60 of those 60 are livid about the tariff policy. So I really think your prior conversation with Susan's fascinating, that there is this sense in which not the normal cast of characters are feeling dissatisfied, but people who are generally sympathetic to the president and his policies
and
are
Dave,
the ones.
Just to make the point, we heard Selena Zito yesterday. In industrial Rust Belt, they're more supportive. You're on the coast. Susan's on the coast, right? On the coast where the international trade and industrialization are less big an issue, less popular, right?
Yeah, but I will point out, Mark, that I have offices in Michigan and Tennessee and Texas. This is not merely just our coastal offices. But then the kind of, you were talking with Dan earlier about polling out there, and I don't really know why there isn't more political polling, but anecdotally, which is, I guess, not as scientific, it's just person after person who runs a business, particularly manufacturing oriented here in the US, that were Trump supporters. They're the ones feeling the angst the most. I
Yep.
started a running log at Bonson.com of all the businesses that are reaching out with their specifics, how many employees, revenues, what they're doing. So that angst is really picking up. But the thing I wanted to say, first of all, for Susan and her parents, because it really spoke to me that they're concerned about being close to retirement or in retirement when you see the market dropping like this. And it's going to sound, Mark, like I'm talking my own book, but I think it's an important thing to say. The dividends of these companies are not dropping. The stock prices are dropping. And this is one of the reasons why people being reliant on things like NVIDIA going up all the time is so dangerous. It happens to be a self-induced Trump trade war that has created this market volatility, but we've had market volatility like this about every 5 years for a long time. It's violent, it's horrible, and it generally does end. This is unique because of the self-induced and I think very foolish reason for it. But my point being, people that can be reliant more on the cash flow from good companies versus the kind of cosmetic of the stock price are going to be in a much better position.
But if things continue this way, the dividends will either go down or disappear, won't they?
Well, we didn't have a single dividend cut through the global financial crisis or at any point in the last 25 years ever. So no,
Wow.
I don't believe that. I believe Procter & Gamble announced yesterday after market a 5% increase of dividend. The Johnson & Johnsons and Procter & Gamble's and these kinds of companies of the world, they're most certainly not going to cut dividends, but it speaks to their maturity and stability of free cash flow that they don't have to. I want to correct something Dan said earlier because I have been finding myself in agreement with Dan a lot lately, which is not totally comfortable, although it's much more comfortable, Dan, to be in agreement with you than it is
Elizabeth Warren.
for Sean and I to be in agreement with Elizabeth Warren, which I think we both were earlier. But I want to point out that Delta did not say we had a bad report, we had a bad earnings.
It was forward looking, right?
But they didn't say it was bad forward looking. They said we can't give a forward look.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Sorry.
And yes.
That's a distinction. It's a distinction,
Yep.
but it's the same directionally. It's the same, right?
It absolutely, and it happened during COVID because how do you give forward guidance when the economy's shut down? And not as many companies are about to do it. First of all, let's just be clear: every public company would love to never give forward guidance.
Right.
They only do it because they have to.
Right.
So when a COVID moment is a really good reason to not give guidance, you're going to see more companies take advantage of that this quarter. I don't think the Walmarts of the world are going to go to layoffs, but I certainly agree with Dan that there are plenty that will. But these layoffs are going to be far more concentrated in small business that don't have access to capital markets than they are in Fortune 500 companies. That's the irony of the right-wing populist moment, that the people who are going to be hurt most by what's happening are the people that are supposed to be being helped.
Yeah. David, one more question and then we got to go. And thank you for joining. Markets are up now. In the face of the Chinese retaliation, the European retaliation, no announced deals. Are they up because Scott Bessent had some good TV appearances? Why are markets up, do you think?
No, there's a few things. A lot of why it was down is that there's forced selling. And so, like, for example, you see the NASDAQ is up 1.5% and the Dow is only up 0.3%. You have everything that was up the most on the year is down the most today. And everything that was down the most is up the most today. So a lot of the forced selling has worked its way through the system. Levered big hedge funds. You're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars that has had to be liquidated.
Right.
So I think you're seeing a little relief from that. But a lot of pharma's down because you guys didn't talk about in President Trump's talk last night about the media not covering it or whatever. He basically said there's more tariffs coming on pharma imports.
Yeah.
And so that's pushed some of the drug sector down today.
Got it. David, thank you. Always happy to have you. Thank you for taking a little break and good luck with everything. Sean, what do you have tonight on your program?
Kevin Hassett.
Oh,
Kevin
that's
Hassett.
amazing.
Oh,
Amazing.
yeah.
Send us a clip and we'll play it on Two-Way tonight.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. It's
no, it'd be kind of you. How long you get with him?
Close to a half hour. So I've got, and I will just say this. Somebody read his book last night. So Kevin Hassett's going to hear about what Kevin Hassett said.
All right. Awesome.
so-
Good. Well done. 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Meghan McCain's Happy Hour. Two great guests, two very interesting people, Ben Ferguson, James Kirchick. Join Meghan today, please, at 5 p.m. I say again, if you haven't sampled Meghan's show, I urge you to. It is a great two-way experience in the Meghan McCain style. That's at 5. And then immediately following that at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, my guest on Two-Way tonight will be Greg Landsman, Congressman from Ohio. Super interesting guy. If you're not familiar with him, he's a voice you're going to want to know about. Great opportunity to join and to be able to ask him questions. So we'll have a roundup of the full day's news on tariffs and everything else, but also a chance to talk with Congressman Landsman. So please join us for that. And the three of us will be back in 23 hours. I'm jumping over now to do Michael Smerconish's show. So if you're smart enough to have SiriusXM, you can listen to me there. Sean tonight, Meghan tonight, me tonight. 3 more opportunities for you to listen. Thank you for joining. We'll see everybody in 23 hours.